3 bone-chilling true tales revealed, unexplained horrors that will haunt you forever. On the outskirts of a quaint Ohio suburb, the winds howled over the dilapidated farmhouse inherited by Sarah Johnson. It was a house with secrets, where each creaky floorboard whispered tales of foreboding. With its peeling paint and cracked windows, it loomed like a faded ghost, casting an eerie shadow over her family as they stepped across the threshold. Sarah, a fiercely independent working-class mother, felt an undercurrent of anxiety settle around her as her son Mark and his skeptical best friend Jake explored the hauntingly quiet halls. As renovations began, the family discovered unsettling artifacts embedded within the walls, an old diary overflowing with frantic scrawls in faded ink and photographs of previous inhabitants, their eyes capturing a pain too intense to forget. Every day, with every layer they stripped away, Mark and Jake began to encounter bizarre occurrences. Doors slammed shut with a force that echoed through the hallway, whispers danced among the shadows, and flickering lights paired with a chill that settled deep in their bones. The house carried a pulse of its own, breathing spells of dread and confusion. The rumors of a malevolent spirit swirled around the townsfolk, a specter tied to the house, known to torment all who dared dwell within. Local lore spoke of grief and loss that spanned generations. Mark's heart raced. Could they be the next chapter in a story soaked with tragedy? Just as Sarah feared they might be consumed by this legacy, she decided they needed to confront their fears. Determined to bring clarity to her family's unsettling experience, she hosted a neighborhood gathering, hoping to share stories and garner support. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue, but the gathering spiraled into chaos. Residents offered conflicting views. Some wanted the house reclaimed for the good of the town while others feared disturbing the spirit believed to protect them from darker forces lurking nearby. Tensions ran high, friendships hung by a thread, and Sarah stood alone in her conviction confronting the past was the only way to reclaim their future. Fueled by both determination and an instinct to protect her family, Sarah led her children and Jake deeper into the twisted history of the house. They met with older residents who recounted grim tragedies linked to the farmhouse. Each shared memory tightened the knot of dread in Sarah's stomach. Nightly disturbances grew worse, terrifying creaks morphed into anguished cries that echoed through the walls, a stark warning that their presence unearthed something more sinister. Just when Sarah summoned courage for their night of reckoning, she stumbled upon a hidden door that should not have existed. Nature raged outside, thunder crackling ominously as they faced undulating shadows within. What lay beyond could be their salvation or their doom. Caught in a battle against a restless spirit's wrath, she hesitated, heart pounding, as the walls whispered chilling words, "You cannot escape what has already been written." What awaited them in that room could change everything. Would they be able to rewrite their destiny before darkness enveloped them forever? The moment Sarah's trembling hand met the twisted doorknob, she felt an electric jolt rush through her body. It was as if the house itself reacted to her touch, a heavy breath escaping the walls that echoed like a warning. The air thickened, whispering secrets carried by the wind that clawed at the windows, flinging raindrops against the glass like desperate pleas for help. "Mom, wait." Mark's voice sliced through the tension. He was glued to the spot, eyes darting nervously between the door and Jake, who stood beside him, his skepticism replaced by an unsettling dread. Sarah turned to look at her son, and in that fleeting moment, her resolve nearly shattered. But the fear in Mark's eyes mirrored her own, urging her to charge forward. "We need to know," she said, her voice barely a whisper, thick with an urgency that seemed to resonate with the room itself. "Whatever is in here, it matters." With a deep breath, she twisted the knob and pushed the door open. The creaking resonated like a scream echoing in a vacuum. The darkness spilled out, engulfing them like an overbearing fog, but Sarah stepped inside. Her heart raced as something brushed against her arm. It wasn't a chill from the cold, it felt like a touch, intimate yet horrifying. The space was small, a claustrophobic attic that had been concealed from time and truth. Rotting wooden beams loomed overhead, casting shadows like elongated fingers across the dusty floor. In the center of the room lay an old trunk, its leather cracked and peeling, adorned with rusted metal clasps. The trunk beckoned, whispering tales of a forgotten life, stories that could unlock the true essence of their nightmare. "Open it," Jake urged, his voice tinged with a mix of excitement and fear. Sarah, heart pounding, moved forward, feeling the weight of the air shift as if the room held its breath. With shaky fingers, she flipped the clasps, and they burst open with a sharp snap, echoing against the silence. Inside lay a collection of items, brittle letters, tarnished jewelry, and a tattered photograph. Sarah's hands trembled as she reached for the photo, lifting it into the dim light. The image was warped, faces obscured with time, but one thing was clear: the expressions etched on their features were of sheer anguish. As if triggered by an invisible force, a low growl reverberated from the shadows. The temperature dropped drastically, sending shivers crawling up Sarah's spine. Mark and Jake leaned closer, the heart-pounding tension keeping them rigid. Suddenly, a long-forgotten scream pierced the silence, reverberating against the walls. It was a sound filled with sorrow but also rage. The walls shook, and dust cascaded from above as they stumbled back, fear colliding with determination. "Get out!" A voice boomed, its desperation palpable, echoing a warning long buried beneath human history. The air pulsed with energy, as if the room itself was alive, fighting against the inevitable, the confrontation between the living and the trapped shadows of the past. "Mom, what do we do?" Mark's voice cut through the chaos, fear and confusion intertwining. "We uncover the truth," Sarah replied, glancing back at the trunk, the conduit between her family and secrets forged in loss. The horrifying reality loomed over them. What had they awakened? But before she could act, the lights flickered violently, plunging them into darkness. A surge of power swept through the house, smashing windows, rattling doors, and the air filled with the sound of anguished wails. "What's happening?" Jake shouted, panic rising in his voice. As they stumbled toward the door, the whisper returned, stronger this time, igniting something primal within her: "You cannot escape your fate." In that blinding moment, Sarah knew they were bound, not just to the house, but to the spirits ensnared by its walls. The war was just beginning, and the resolve would soon lead them into a battle far beyond their understanding. Would the truth they uncovered lead to their salvation, or would it serve only to shackle them tighter to the horror entwined in this haunted legacy? In the depths of their fear, they could sense an energy building, too powerful to ignore. What awaited them as they crossed back through the threshold would determine if they could truly escape the tragedy that had already unfolded. The air crackled as the shadows closed in around them, a suffocating blanket of dread draping over their shoulders. Sarah's heart raced, matching the frantic beat of her thoughts. Each tick of her pulse resounded like a drum, urging her to move, to find a way out of this nightmare, their nightmare. "Mom!" Mark's voice trembled. The fear in his eyes ignited a fire deep within her, pushing her to fight through the impending darkness. "We have to go." "No!" Sarah shouted, a surge of determination coursing through her. "We can't leave yet. Not without the truth." She glanced back at the trunk, its allure suddenly overshadowed by the chaos swirling around them. As her fingers brushed against its surface, she felt a jolt of clarity. With a deep breath, she returned to the trunk, brushing aside the dust that had settled over the items like a thin veil of forgetfulness. "What did you experience?" she whispered to the silence. The air stilled momentarily, the weight of history filling the room, hanging heavily in every corner. Mark and Jake hesitated, uncertainty flickering on their faces, but Sarah wouldn't let fear paralyze her. Her fingers trembled as she dug deeper into the trunk. Amidst the mementos, she found a dusty diary, the edges frayed and yellowed with age. It felt significant, a heartbeat of the past pulsing through her fingertips. As she opened the journal, the musty scent of dried ink wafted into the air, drawing her in. The words on the pages were scrawled in hurried, barely legible handwriting, filled with anguish and longing. Each sentence pulled her closer, unveiling fragments of a life overshadowed by tragedy. "Listen," she said, her voice steadying, capturing Mark S. and Jake S. attention. The words spilled forth, painting vivid pictures of loss and despair. A woman, trapped in a cycle of torment, her cries echoing through the house, begging for release. The diary detailed her search for peace, each entry growing more desperate, more haunting. The lights flickered again, and the paralyzing chill swept over them, but she pressed on. She was reaching out. She needs us to know. Each revelation brought a fresh surge of energy, a connection to the sorrow that bound them to this place. Suddenly, the room trembled violently. The growl returned, vibrating through the floorboards, a guttural sound filled with rage that drowned out Sarah's voice. The trunk shook, as if something within was awakening. "Get back!" Jake shouted, his eyes wide with horror, but Sarah stood her ground, clutching the diary like a lifeline. "Whatever you are, we're here to help you. We want to understand." Then it happened. A cold wind whipped through the attic, extinguishing the last flicker of light, plunging them into pitch black. Panic surged like wildfire. Sarah could hear ragged breaths beside her, the rush of fear enveloping them. "Mom! We have to get out!" Mark yelled, his voice fighting against the tumult. But the whisper wrapped around Sarah's mind, relentless. "You cannot escape your fate." Suddenly, in the depths of darkness, a spotlight of icy breath engulfed her, wrapping around her throat, tightening like a vice. She gasped, struggling to breathe. A glimpse of movement. Shadows darted around her, whispering her name. "Sarah!" Mark's panic-stricken voice surged through the chaos, piercing through the veil of darkness. With a surge of adrenaline, Sarah clutched the diary tightly, raising it high. In her mind, she could almost hear the journal's silent plea. The spectral figures seemed to waver, hesitating as she proclaimed, "I will listen. We will listen." The echoes of the past swelled, intertwining with the present. For a fleeting moment, it felt as if the world had stopped. The wails softened, the shadows drew back, yearning for something, compassion, understanding, but would it be enough to break their hold, or had they just stirred something even more powerful? A shriek shattered the silence, thunderous and spine-chilling, breaking the spell. The air electrified as the lights flickered back to life, illuminating the attic once more. The trunk thudded violently, as something inside fought to be free. What was unleashed, and would they be able to face it? Time teetered on the edge of oblivion as they braced for the unknown horror now awakened. The battle for their souls had only just begun. The atmosphere shifted as the shriek faded, leaving an eerie silence that settled over the attic like a thick fog. Sarah's breath came in shallow gasps, her heart pounding loudly in her ears. The trunk trembled violently, wood creaking, as if something within was desperate to escape. Mark clutched her arm, his grip tightening. "Mom, what if?" "Stay close," she snapped, trying to hold on to the last vestiges of courage amidst the rising tide of fear. Jake shifted back, glancing nervously at the corners of the room, as if expecting ghosts to materialize in the flickering light. The trunk's lid popped open suddenly, slamming back from an unseen force. All three of them jerked back, adrenaline coursing through their veins, hearts racing. The forceful gust rattled papers and trinkets around them. Sarah peered inside, and her breath caught in her throat. The diary lay on top, but it was no longer alone. A faint glow emanated from the trunk's depths. Shadows danced within it, writhing like dark tendrils reaching out, elongating, beckoning. Sarah felt an insatiable pull towards it, a mix of dread and morbid curiosity igniting a fire in her chest. "What is that?" Jake whispered, his voice quivering. "I can't tell," Sarah murmured, entranced. "But we have to find out." "Are you crazy?" Mark shouted. "This is exactly what we were trying to avoid." "The truth lies within," she replied, determination surfacing despite the lead weight of fear in her stomach. "We have to face this. We owe it to her to them. Mark's face twisted in apprehension, but the grip of the trunk's pull was too strong. Taking a deep breath, Sarah leaned closer, her heart thudding like a war drum. She reached into the trunk, fingers trembling, grasping for whatever secrets were hidden in the depths of the darkness. The moment her fingers touched the cold surface, a surge of emotions blasted through her: sorrow, regret, anger. Each felt like a blade cutting into her thoughts. The shadows swirled faster, and a wailing cry rang out, echoing off the walls of the attic, flooding her mind with images of despair. Faces twisted in torment, endless screams, a feeling of being trapped in a cycle, the chains of the past dragging them through a hell of their own making. Mark stumbled back, his eyes wide with terror. "Mom! You have to get out of there. Just stay with me," she shouted, trying to break through the fog of despair that clouded her senses. "We need to know what happened." As if responding to her plea, the shadows thickened, morphing into distinct shaped silhouettes of figures clawing at the edges of her vision, their mouths opening in silent screams. The cold sensation around her throat tightened again, but this time, it felt different. It was desperate, longing for release. A heart-wrenching vision emerged, crystal clear. A woman, pale as dawn, stood crying in the same attic. Her eyes boring into Sarah's, filled with sorrow that reached across time. "Help me," she mouthed silently, the words barely making it through the barrier between them, but the weight of her despair washed over Sarah like a tidal wave. Suddenly, the window blew wide open. The attic filled with an icy wind that howled like a banshee, scattering remnants of the past photographs, brittle postcards, and fragments of other lives. A cacophony of loss enveloped them. "Mom, please." Mark's voice shattered the moment. The urgency in his tone broke through the binding current that held Sarah captive. She wrenched herself from the shadow's grasp, backing away from the trunk. The air crackled around them again, and a voice resonated deeply, rumbling through the foundation of the house. "You cannot escape your fate." In that heartbeat, Sarah felt the ground beneath them quiver, an ominous warning. Whatever was alive within that trunk was no mere memory, it was a force that could reshape their very reality. "What do we do?" Jake's voice trembled as they exchanged terrified glances. I don't know," Sarah stammered, their past crashing into their present. But as she stared back at the trunk, something sinister flickered within its depths. The battle. For the truth had taken on a life of its own, and the real horror had only just begun to claw its way into existence. The question lingered in the air: could they confront the horrors that awaited them, or would they succumb to the darkness? With the echoes of the ghostly cries still ringing in her ears, Sarah turned to Mark and Jake. Fear gripped her insides, but so did a fierce determination. "We have to figure this out," she said, her voice trembling. "If that woman needs help, we can't just ignore it." Mark shook his head violently. "No, Mom. You don't understand what we're dealing with. Those shadows, they're not just memories. They're alive." Jake, typically calmer than his brother, was visibly shaken too. "Maybe we should get out of here. Just leave the trunk and forget everything." The icy wind howled around them, amplifying their panic. Sarah felt a cold sweat creeping down her back, but she couldn't shake the connection she felt with the woman in the vision. There was something entwined in her fate that resonated deep within her soul. "No!" she shouted, and for a moment, the room fell silent, save for the rhythmic chaos of her heartbeat. "I can't just let this go. I need to know what happened." As she reached once more towards the trunk, the shadows inside pulsed with a life of their own, shifting and flickering with angry vigor. With her heart pounding, she leaned closer, determined to crack the puzzle open. "I won't let you down." At that moment, the trunk trembled again, and something shot out, a cold, dark hand appearing from the depths, grasping hungrily for her. She yelped, jerking back just as it snatched at the air. Allison, the woman from the attic, hovered just out of reach, a spectral silhouette waiting for her chance. "Help me." The voice came again, clearer now, as if the shadows were giving it strength. Mark's shout pierced the air, "Get away from there. His voice splintered into a terrified scream as the shadows surged forward. Suddenly, the attic lights flickered, casting erratic beams that revealed silhouettes lurking in the far corners, faces twisted in agony, clawing at the walls, desperate for release. Sarah's chest tightened. It was as if the very attic held the weight of all the pain and suffering trapped within. "Mom, please." Mark's voice was laced with desperation. "We have to go, now." But she couldn't leave. An insatiable urge rooted her in place. "There must be something here that can help," she whispered, her eyes darting back to the trunk. "The answers lie within." With shaking hands, Sarah yanked the diary from the trunk and opened it, pages peeling with age, ink running in messy splotches. The words written in hurried strokes jumped out at her: frantic confessions, pleas for help, and dark secrets begging to be unveiled. The woman's suffering echoed through the lines. Just then, the door to the attic slammed shut with a deafening bang. The sound reverberated through them, and a cold panic clawed at her throat. "We're trapped!" Jake shouted, pushing his back against the door, though it didn't budge. The shadows began closing in, swirling around them like a storm, an angry tempest wrestling with their very souls. "What do you want from us?" she cried out to the darkness. The air became thick with despair, choking her thoughts. As if their question was heard, shadows extended toward Sarah, melting together to form a figure, a ghastly image of the woman she had seen. Her face twisted in rage and sadness, eyes filled with unending sorrow, she loomed tall. "To know the truth you must embrace the pain." The essence of the past surged along the walls, crawling toward them as whispers became a cacophony. An overwhelming sensation of grief hit her square in the chest, almost knocking her off balance. "Mom!" Mark screamed, fear radiating from his every word. "Don't listen." But Sarah felt herself drawn to the woman again. This time, she wasn't afraid. She stepped closer, gripping the diary tightly. "What do you want from us?" she repeated, voice steadied in response. The apparition raised a hand, pointing toward the window, now cracked open, revealing forces beyond the attic, dark clouds swirling above, lightning crackling through the gloom. "Face what was lost." The woman's voice echoed like a distant thunderclap, reverberating with otherworldly intensity. As Sarah faced the dark, stormy sky, a shocking realization gripped her heart: whatever happened here was only the beginning. The chains that linked her to this woman were deeper than she could fathom, and the horror awaiting her on the other side might be more than she could endure, but there was no turning back now. The pivotal moment was at hand. Would they embrace the darkness, or would they finally break the curse that bound them all? She turned back to her boys, her determination renewed. "We need to face the truth together." Just as they steeled themselves, the shadows lunged, engulfing Sarah in a shroud of cold that numbed her very being. Clarity washed over her like a wave. In that moment, one question seared in her mind: how far would they go to uncover the darkness within? And did they have the strength to confront what lay ahead? The shadows closed in, thick and oppressive, wrapping Sarah in an icy cocoon that stung her skin and froze her breath. Her heart raced, pounding a frantic drumbeat against the silence of the room. She felt her boys shifting nervously beside her, the weight of their fear palpable in the air. All at once, the figures in the room began to whisper, their voices merging into a haunting symphony of sorrow. It was a chorus of despair, echoing through her mind. "Help us, set us free," they wailed, their tones twisted in anguish. "Shut it out!" Jake yelled, but Sarah stood firm, captivated by the apparition in front of her. She had to know. With a deep breath, she opened the diary wide, scanning the chaotic script as if the words might transform into answers. "Embrace the pain." The woman's voice lulled Sarah deeper into contemplation. Could that really be the key? "Mom, what are you waiting for?" Mark's voice cut through the haze, panic bubbling over. "This is insane." Yet, like a moth to a flame, Sarah was drawn to the connection with Allison. "Why are you trapped? What happened to you?" she pleaded, her voice trembling but unwavering. The spectral figure inclined its head, the distorted features softening ever so slightly. The past must be unveiled. Only then will the truth be yours. Fear wrestled with curiosity as she shifted her focus back to the diary. The words jumped out at her, illuminating the darkness in her mind. "Allison," she whispered, "it says here you were betrayed, forsaken by those you loved. But why?" Before she could finish her thought, the shadows lunged again, filling the space with a rush of icy wind. The temperature plummeted, and Sarah's teeth chattered involuntarily. "Hold on tight," she shouted to her boys. Heart racing, she clutched the diary, desperate for substance, for hope. The apparition shrieked, a sound that cut through the chaos. "They will come for you too. When the truth is sought, the darkness will retaliate. You must act before the storm closes in." The shadows escalated, spiraling and twisting, forming a vortex around them. It was as if the very fabric of reality was bending, warping under the weight of their collective suffering. Sarah steeled herself, unwilling to back down. "Allison, we're not afraid. Show us what we must do." Suddenly, the room felt like it was collapsing, the floor trembling beneath their feet. The shadows deepened, like a tide threatening to swallow them whole. A surge of wind burst from the cracked window, sending papers flying. The diary at her side fluttered violently. The words inside began to shift, creating an unsettling pattern before her eyes. "Mom!" Mark shrieked, desperately trying to keep his balance. "It's gonna," but then there was silence, a moment that felt suspended in time. The shadows peeled back like a curtain, revealing a mirror. In the reflection, Sarah saw herself, but distorted and twisted, eyes clouded with nightmares, like a prisoner of the darkness. "No, no!" she gasped, backing away. But her reflection smiled, a knowing, sinister grin that made her skin crawl. "Mom?" Jake's voice trembled, cracking through the paralysis gripping her. The mirror shimmered, revealing glimpses of moments long forgotten, laughter, love, then betrayal and loss. "Face your truth, Sarah," the apparition urged again, "you must decide what you are willing to sacrifice." A gut-wrenching realization sunk in, twisting her stomach into knots. "Is this what you wanted me to see? Our secrets?" But before she could think, the darkness surged forth in a wild rush, engulfing her voice and closing in. Shadows flooded towards them, a mass of anguish and fury. With one last gasp, Sarah screamed, "Together! We face this together!" And just like that, her world erupted into a cacophony of voices, echoing with pain and promise, chaos consuming everything around them. As the whirlpool of darkness tightened, something within Sarah ignited. Would they finally confront the horrors of their past, or had they unleashed terror that even they couldn't contain? The sweetness of liberation or the bitterness of despair hung in balance, churning with each passing moment. What path would they take as the veil between their reality and the haunting past thinned to breaking? The shadows swirled violently, a tempest of anguish closing in. Sarah felt the weight of their despair crash against her like the tide, pulling her under. She reached out, the diary slipping in her trembling hands. "No! We can't let it control us!" she shouted, her voice barely breaking through the roar of sorrow. Then, just as quickly as it had gathered, the storm of darkness paused. Silence engulfed them, almost serene in its unsettling nature. The mirror's reflection remained a twisted version of her own countenance, and for a fleeting moment, Sarah stared deep into her haunted eyes. "What do you want?" she asked, breathless. "Leave the boys." The reflection hissed, its voice a sinister echo that reverberated within her. "Let them go. Only then can you be free, Mom." Mark cried, gripping Jake's shoulder. "You can't." Sarah's heart pounded furiously in her chest. "I would never abandon you." The words tumbled from her mouth with a fierce defiance. Even in the face of unspeakable darkness, her resolve shone bright. The shadows shuddered, as if recoiling from her words, but with every declaration of loyalty, the other Sarah sneered back, taunting her. You think this love will save you? They will suffer the same fate as those before you. A gust of icy wind lifted her hair, pushing her back toward the mirror. The edges of reality blurred, and the figures began to scream in unison, their voices weaving a terrifying chant. Sacrifice, sacrifice, sacrifice. Sarah's stomach tightened with fear. I won't pay that price. Out of desperation, she lifted the diary high above her head. You want the truth? Here it is. The pages fluttered wildly, revealing words that surged and danced like fireflies in the dead of night. The whispers surged louder, fighting against her proclamation. They didn't want her to remember. Face it, she yelled, a sudden wildness in her voice. If Allison was betrayed, then I won't turn my back on my own. I'm done running. She began to read aloud, each word hitting her like a drum. The shadowy figures distorted, their scream faltering, they seemed less a menacing force and more a panicking crowd. A chill wrapped around her, but warmth flowed through her veins. Sarah felt a surge of energy, the gnarled hands of despair started to retract. You think you can bind me with your sorrow? I'll break this cycle. The mirror rippled, and for the first time, she saw flickers of light within the darkness. The other Sarah's expression twisted with rage and confusion. You've opened the door. Why won't you let it consume you? I'm not like you. Sarah shouted, her heels digging into the wooden floor as she stood her ground. I choose love. I choose light. The shadows thrashed violently, racing towards her, but she pushed her resolve outward, casting a blinding light. It erupted from deep within her soul, spilling across the room like a flood. The anguished whispers faded, replaced by an echo of clarity. A shadow sprang toward her boys. In a heartbeat, Sarah darted. Jake! Mark! She grabbed her sons, pulling them close as she shielded them with her body. A searing wave hit her. The light shimmered fiercely, pushing back the darkness, but the instant she thought they were safe, a deep laughter echoed from the mirror, a sound that chilled even more than the swirling shadows. You think you've won? The darkness you defy, it knows your deepest fears, Sarah. And it will return. Just as swiftly as it had come, the light flickered. The shadows resumed their creeping approach, a relentless tide ready to drown them once again. Breathless and vulnerable, Sarah locked eyes with Mark and Jake. We stand together, right? No matter what. Their fierce nods fueled her spirit. They were stronger than the darkness. But as the specters loomed ever closer, she wondered, were they truly prepared for what lay ahead? The dread of what was to come hung heavily in the air. Shadows swirled, readying for an unholy charge. Would they survive the oncoming storm, or were they merely beginning to scrape the surface of a malevolent truth? The shadows lunged forward with a ferocity that stole the breath from Sarah's lungs. She tightened her grip around her sons, their warmth a fragile shield against the encroaching darkness. As the suffocating atmosphere surrounded them, the air crackled with a sinister energy, and flashes from the mirror began to distort reality itself. Her heart thundered in her chest as the shadows lengthened, clawing toward them with grotesque hands. Don't let go! She shouted, her voice cutting through the chaos. Mark and Jake squeezed her tighter, their fear palpable. The whispers of the trapped spirits echoed, growing louder, intertwining with her thoughts. You don't know what you're fighting. Suddenly, the diary burst into flames, burning with an intensity that seized her attention. No! Sarah shrieked as she frantically looked down. But instead of ash, the fading words formed fiery paths, illuminating forgotten memories. Names she had lost to time flickered across her mind like a film playing just out of reach. Allison. The betrayal. The wreckage left in its wake. Mom. Mark grabbed her wrist. What is happening? I don't know. But deep inside, she felt a stirring of recognition. The light was more than just power, it was clarity. Hold on to each other. she commanded, drawing strength from their bond. She could feel it, something in the core of her very being awakening in response to the encroaching storm. Drawing a deep breath, she closed her eyes against the swirling dread. She focused on her sons, their laughter ringing like a bell in her ears. With a fierce determination, Sarah opened her eyes. "You may know my fears, but you don't own me." Each word vibrated with strength, pushing back against the pressing shadows, and yet, from behind her, an almost tender voice emerged, that familiar tone filled with malice. "Do you really think this will end well, dear Sarah? You'll never escape the chains of your past." The twisted reflection of herself was back, more menacing than ever, and pain radiated from it like a weapon. "Stop!" Sarah cried out, her voice rising. "I will not be a prisoner of my memories." She could feel the flickers of light woven within her heart, like sparks begging to be unleashed. The diary had shown her a path, and she would walk it. A piercing shriek erupted behind her, echoing through the narrow confines of the room. Bursting with unearthly energy, shadows erupted against the light. It felt like a race against time, a final stand against the terror that threatened to devour them. "We are stronger together," she shouted, her voice now steady. Her sons responded in unison, their voices merging with hers, creating an unbreakable wall of harmony. As if responding to their shared defiance, the shadows jolted and convulsed, shrinking back from the radiant light surging around them. It filled the room, illuminating every dark corner. The darkness that encircled them flickered in and out, repelled by their bond, but it still sought to consume their very essence. "Do you see?" The reflection wheezed, each word dripping with venom. "This is just the beginning. The deeper truths that lie beneath will crush you all." But she couldn't back down. Not now. The love she felt for her children shone brighter than any fear. "No. We face it together." The brilliant light expanded and engulfed the room, a force of hope that surged, roaring defiantly against the dark, blinding white light filled the mirror, and Sarah felt herself teeter at the edge of a precipice, her past once again looming behind her. What would be left when the light faded? As uncertainty draped her like a shroud, she clung to her sons, their faces filled with courage and determination. Suddenly, the world fell silent. A stillness so heavy it felt as if the air itself had vanished. And then, from the darkness, came something unexpected. A faint but recognizable laughter that spiraled through the cold void like the shadows were teasing her, a whisper of secrets that longed to be revealed. What was this new twist waiting in the depths of darkness? Would they emerge stronger, or would fear infiltrate their sanctuary once again? A crack split the silence. It echoed like a gunshot, jolting Sarah from her daze. The laughter twisted in her ears, growing louder. It was mocking, a cruel melody that seeped into her soul. "What do you want from us?" she shouted, rage bubbling within her. The shadows danced more fervently, swirling like a tempest around them. Her heart raced. She could feel the weight of their presence, a suffocating blanket threatening to pull her under. Yet, around her, the light pulsed, fueled by the bond of love she shared with Mark and Jake. They made her strong. They were her lifeline. An oppressive weight crushed down, she gasped for air, struggling against the paralysis that gripped her body. "Stay together," she screamed, willing her boys to hold on. Mark's voice trembled. "Mom. It's so dark I can't see." The intensity of her resolve lit a fire within her. With a deep breath, she focused on that bond. The warmth radiated from their clasped hands, brightening the darkness. "We can do this. Remember our family, our love," she insisted, her voice piercing through the thickening veil of shadows. Her words echoed against the confinement, weaving through the air like threads of hope. Suddenly, the reflection of herself twisted grotesquely in the mirror. "You think love can defeat me? You're a fool," it screamed, the voice dripping venom like poison. "You don't know what lurks beneath, do you?" Sarah felt a cold sweat break against her skin. The mirror flickered, and the laughter faded, replaced by haunting memories she had buried deep. Faces flashed before her: Allison's betrayal, lost friendships, her own failures. Each memory was sharper than the last. "No," she breathed, shaking her head fiercely. "I won't let you take me there." The room began to tremble. Mark and Jake pressed closer, their little bodies quaking against hers. "Mom, I'm scared." "Me too," she whispered, heartsick. "But we have each other." Summoning every ounce of determination, she raised her chin, willing the darkness to retreat. "You will not win. I refuse to let fear dictate my story." With that declaration, a surge of energy erupted from within her, bright and blinding. Light cascaded from her heart, forging through the gloom and illuminating every crevice of the room. The shadows shrieked, twisting violently as the golden glow surrounded them. "Look!" Jake shouted, pointing. The mirror began to crack, the surface splintering with flashes of vibrant light piercing through the fissures. Each crack felt like a personal victory. It hurt to see her painful memories laid bare, but now she faced them with the support of her sons. "Together, forever," Mark whispered, and Sarah nodded, tears spilling down her cheeks as pride flooded her. But the sinister laughter didn't relent. "You may find pieces of strength, but the truth will set you free, or destroy you." The shadows surged one last time, a final wave against the light, giggling like children in a game. The mirror shattered, pieces scattering like stars across the floor. In that intricate chaos, a shift occurred. An unfamiliar light, not hers, broke through ghostly silhouettes, figures lost in mourning. She recognized one instantly. Allison. Sarah. The voice was almost tender but tinged with undeniable pain. It stretched toward her, fingers reaching through the remnants of the mirror. Her heart thudded loudly, confusion swirling like a maelstrom. "What do you want?" she demanded, uncertainty grappling with hope. What had she done to deserve this confrontation? "I am here to warn you." Allison's voice trembled as she stepped into the light, her features both familiar and so distant. "You must confront the darkness before it consumes you." Sarah's world shifted, imbalance slamming into her gut. The shadows stirred, glimmering with malice, sensing an opportunity to strike. "Mom, it's coming back." Jake screamed, his eyes wide with terror. They stood at the precipice of something monumental. Gripped by the weight of her memories and power unclaimed, Sarah sensed a choice looming before her. To embrace the truth would require sacrifice. Was she ready to confront not just the shadows, but the darkness buried deep within her? What more could this twisted game of fate reveal? The answer felt just out of reach. The tempest of shadows swirled around Sarah, threatening to engulf her in waves of despair. She clutched Mark and Jake tightly, feeling their warmth against the biting chill of the darkness. The presence of Allison, both comforting and ominous, loomed before her, offering a lifeline yet demanding a price. "Please," Sarah gasped, her voice trembling with resolve. "Tell me what I need to do." "The truth is the key," Allison cautioned, her voice a whisper, carrying the weight of centuries. "But to uncover it, you must unearth the pain you've buried. Only then can you break the cycle." "Mom, we can't trust her," Mark implored, his young voice laden with fear. Shadows lurked at the corners, writhing with malevolence. "I have to know, Mark." She turned, searching her son's eyes for hope. "Whatever happens, we face this together." With that declaration, the shadows crackled, sensing the shift. A distant rumble echoed from the walls, a growl of hunger in response to her mounting courage. The air thickened with tension, stinging her skin a warning. "Speak the truth," Allison urged urgently. "Release the burdens you hold." Sarah's heart raced as she inhaled deeply. Memories flickered, faces tangled with sorrow and fury, her own past mistakes and the betrayal that had haunted her family. "I was afraid to face what I had lost, to admit my failures, and the anger that festered within me." Tears streamed down her cheeks as the weight of those memories crashed over her, each one sharper than the blade of despair that tore at her heart. The shadows recoiled slightly, tasting her acceptance, their hold loosening yet threatening to strike again. "Face it, Sarah," came the echoing voice beside her, mingling with the rasp of shadows. "You will be tested, and your strength to reclaim will be challenged." "I'm ready," she shouted, her voice rich with conviction. "I will not shy away from who I am or what I've done. I stand for my family." The room trembled as a surge of energy rippled from her core, fire igniting in her veins. "You've tried to take my memories, but I claim them back. I will not let fear dictate our lives anymore." A blinding light erupted from her, pushing back the shadows that twisted and writhed, hissing and snarling like cornered animals. Mark and Jake clung to her, their energy feeding her resolve. With each word she unleashed truth and pain alike. The mirror shattered into cascading shards, each reflection a fragment of the past revealing her scars and triumphs, rebirth from ashes. "You will not control me. I break this cycle." The dark tendrils slowed, hesitating, and with a fierce roar that surged from her chest and heart, Sarah drove back the shadows for the final time. "Together we forge our path." As if electrified by her force, the room shifted. The shadows clung less fiercely, shrinking and swirling, retreating in the face of her newfound strength. The oppressive energy dissipated, replaced by an undeniable warmth enveloping them, spiraling upwards like dawn breaking through clouds. Allison's figure shimmered on the edge of the light. "You are powerful, Sarah. Embrace this strength, and let go of burdens once and for all." "I will," Sarah replied, her voice sure as she gripped both Mark and Jake's hands tighter, feeling the bond anchor her amidst the wild currents of change. "You will not suffer anymore, Allison, nor will my family." With a final surge of energy, she released the pain, watching the darkness disintegrate into nothingness. Laughter broke free, bright and joyous, spilling into every corner of the attic. Her heart swelled as she turned to her sons, eyes glistening with relief. "We did it," Mark whispered, his face gleaming with newfound hope. In that moment, the echoes of shadows faded into whispers of what had been, replaced by a soothing silence. "Together," Jake murmured, still holding her tightly. "We never have to face anything alone again." Sarah smiled through her tears, the weight of the past lifting. "No, we don't. We're free and we move forward." They stood in the now quiet attic, fear having turned to liberation. The warmth of daybreak spilled through the open window, chasing dark remnants into the corners, revealing the beauty of a new beginning. As they stepped out of the oppressive gloom of the house, the sun broke over the horizon like a promise fulfilled. Mark and Jake glanced back at the farmhouse, a once looming figure now replaced by a structure that seemed lighter, welcoming. They were free. The suffocating grip of the past no longer chained them. They had faced their fears, and the darkness would no longer haunt them. "Let us go home," Sarah said, exhaustion and relief washing over her. They walked together, arms linked, hearts lighter than ever before, and in the echo of the past, a new story began, a legacy of love, courage, and resilience that would ripple through generations to come. Now's the time for you to take action. Don't let the next incredible story slip into the void. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss a single moment of the adventure. Smash the like button now to help fuel our journey through the algorithm. Remember to flood the comments section with your thoughts and theories about this thrilling conclusion. And if you know anyone who needs to hear this story, instantly share this video with at least 5 friends. Show your support. This is the moment to rally together.